We have a problem with our language. When the temperature drops, you say the cold is biting. You say it settles in your bones. You treat it as a noun, a thing that possesses agency. A force that moves across a landscape and occupies a room. Even your thermostat reinforces this lie, offering you a choice between two competing powers, heat and cold. But in the language of the universe, there is only one actor. Imagine you are looking at a shadow on a wall. You can measure the shadow. You can describe its shape, its darkness, and how it moves when you walk past it. You might even be tempted to say the shadow is casting itself onto the surface, but you know better. You know the shadow has no independent existence. It is not a thing being added to the wall. It is merely the place where light has been prevented from going. You cannot shine a beam of dark to create a shadow. You can only remove the light. This is the first intuition you must discard. Cold is the shadow of energy. When you hold an ice cube in your hand, you feel a sensation you have labeled cold. Your brain interprets this as the ice transferring its chill into your palm. This is a sensory hallucination. The ice isn't giving you anything. It is not radiating coldness. Instead, the ice is a vacuum. It is a thief. It is reaching into your skin and stripping away the kinetic energy of your molecules. The sensation you call cold is actually the scream of your own nerve endings as they lose their motion. We use the word cold to describe a state of lack, but we mistake it for a state of being. It's a linguistic shortcut that has crippled your understanding of reality. We talk about catching a cold or keeping the cold out, as if we are building walls against an invading army. But you cannot barricade yourself against a non-entity. You are not fighting an invader. You are trying to hold onto a leak. Consider a hole in the ground. You can fall into it. You can measure its depth, and you can fill it with dirt. But the hole isn't made of anything. It is defined entirely by the absence of the dirt that should be there. If you tried to study the physics of a hole as if the hole were a solid object, you will fail. Physics does not have a law of cold. There are no cold particles. There is no cold radiation. There is only the presence of energy and the terrifying, vast emptiness where that energy has failed to reach. When you say it is cold outside, what you are actually saying is that the universe has forgotten to vibrate in that particular spot. You are standing in the middle of a cosmic robbery, and you are blaming the silence for the noise it isn't making. To understand why cold is an empty word, you have to stop looking at the world as a collection of solid objects. You have to look at the jiggle. Richard Feynman, one of the most effective destroyers of false intuition, once said that if all scientific knowledge were to be lost and only one sentence passed on to the next generation, it should be this: all things are made of atoms, little particles that move around in perpetual motion. This sounds like a boring fact from a middle school textbook. It isn't. It is the most violent realization you can have about the chair you are sitting on. That chair feels solid. It feels still. It feels room temperature. But the reality is a riot. Inside that chair, and inside your own body, trillions of atoms are slamming into each other with the ferocity of a mosh pit. They are vibrating, rotating, and ricocheting. This is what heat is. Heat is not a fluid that sits inside a cup of coffee. Heat is simply the name we give to the jiggling of atoms. When things are hot, the atoms are frantic. They are screaming. They are moving so fast that they take up more space, pushing against each other, demanding room. Now, look at the cold water in your fridge. You see it as still. You see it as chilled. But Feynman would tell you to look closer. In that water, the atoms have simply lost their nerve. They are still moving, but they are sluggish. They are bumping into each other with less enthusiasm. When you touch that water, why does it feel cold? It's because your atoms are jiggling faster than the water's atoms. When you make contact, your fast-moving particles slam into their slow-moving particles. In every collision, your atoms lose a bit of their speed. They transfer their jiggle to the water. Your atoms slow down. The water's atoms speed up. Temperature is nothing more than a speedometer for the microscopic. You think you are measuring a quality of the air. You aren't. You are measuring the average kinetic energy of a chaotic crowd. There is no such thing as cold atoms. There are only atoms with low momentum. You have been taught to see cold as a state of matter, but matter is never cold. It is only less busy. If you could zoom in far enough, you would see that the difference between a blast furnace and an ice cube isn't a difference of substance. It's just a difference in tempo. One is a frantic drum solo. The other is a slow, dying hum. But here is where your intuition truly breaks. If heat is motion, then cold is just the word we use when we notice that motion is missing. You are not feeling a new sensation. You are feeling the absence of a vibration that you have grown accustomed to. You are a creature of the jiggle, and when the jiggle slows down, you feel the universe beginning to stall. Physics is often taught as a series of balances, but the reality of temperature is a story of inevitable loss. We call it cooling down, as if the object is performing an action. It isn't, it is being robbed. Imagine a crowded room where half the people are sprinting and the other half are standing still as they collide. The sprinters will inevitably hit the stationary people. The sprinters will slow down, the stationary people will stumble forward. After enough time, no one is sprinting and no one is still. Everyone is just jogging at the same, mediocre pace. This is the only thing the universe knows how to do. It is called thermal equilibrium, but you should think of it as a microscopic tax. When you step outside on a winter night, the air is not attacking you. The air is simply a vast collection of slow-moving molecules. You, however, are a high-energy machine. You are warm, which is just a polite way of saying your molecules are vibrating violently. The moment you expose your skin to that air, a trillion collisions begin. Your fast-moving surface atoms strike the slow-moving air molecules. In every single impact, physics demands a payout. The laws of momentum dictate that your atoms must give up a portion of their speed to the air. You are donating your life force, your jiggle, to the atmosphere. The air doesn't get significantly warmer because it is vast, but you get significantly slower. This is the great theft. You are a battery being drained by the very space you occupy. You might think you can stop this with a coat or a wall. You can't. You can only delay it. Insulation isn't a shield that blocks the cold. It is merely a labyrinth that makes it harder for your energy to escape. It traps a layer of air and forces your atoms to collide with the same few molecules over and over, slowing the rate of the theft. But the theft never stops. The universe is a giant sink, and you are a leaky bucket. We have built our entire civilization on the fear of this theft. We burn coal, split atoms, and harness the sun just to keep our molecules vibrating at a specific frequency. We are desperately trying to maintain a high-speed existence in a universe that prefers a crawl. Cold doesn't exist, but the process of becoming cold is the most fundamental experience of being alive. It is the sensation of the universe trying to even the score. It is the realization that your energy isn't actually yours, it's just on loan from the vacuum, and the vacuum is very patient about getting it back. If cold is just the absence of motion, then it stands to reason that there must be a point where the motion stops entirely. A floor, a basement for the universe. We call this absolute zero. In your daily life, you think of zero as a starting point. 0 degrees Celsius is just where water freezes. 0 degrees Fahrenheit is just a particularly miserable day in North Dakota. These are arbitrary lines drawn by men on glass tubes. But $0 text K dollar Kelvin, roughly minus $273. Q-circ text C dollar is not arbitrary. It is the theoretical speed of stillness. You imagine absolute zero as a place of ultimate peace, a crystalline, perfect quiet where every atom finally stops its frantic jiggling and sits perfectly still. You think that if you could just remove enough energy, you could reach this state of total rest. You are wrong again. The universe does not allow for stillness. This is where your intuition regarding cold hits a wall of quantum reality, according to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You cannot know both the position and the momentum of a particle with perfect certainty. If an atom were to stop moving completely, we would know exactly where it is and exactly how fast it's going. Zero. Physics forbids this. It would be a violation of the fundamental rules of the game. Even at the coldest theoretical limit, there is something called zero-point energy. The atoms continue to twitch. They possess a restless, ghostly vibration that can never be drained away. Think about what this implies. Cold is not just a lack of energy. It is a limit that can be approached but never actually touched. You can get within a billionth of a degree of absolute zero, but you can never arrive. The floor of the universe is a mirage. We often talk about the coldness of space, but space isn't cold in the way you think. Space is an insulator. If you were floating in the vacuum between stars, you wouldn't freeze instantly like a character in a bad sci-fi movie. In fact, your body would struggle to get rid of its heat because there are no air molecules to steal your jiggle. You would die of many things. but feeling a chill wouldn't be the first. The cold we fear is actually a very specific, terrestrial experience. It is the feeling of being surrounded by a medium that is more efficient at vibrating than we are. Absolute zero is the realization that no matter how much you cool the universe, it remains inherently, stubbornly alive. Matter cannot be silent. True cold, total stillness is a mathematical ghost. It is a state that the laws of physics will break themselves to prevent. To understand why the universe feels colder over time, you have to stop thinking about motion and start thinking about probability. This is the realm of entropy, the universe's absolute refusal to stay organized. Imagine you have a box divided by a wall. On the left side, you have a swarm of fast-moving hot molecules. On the right, a swarm of slow-moving cold molecules. This is an organized system. There is a clear distinction, a boundary, a sense of here versus there. Now, pull the wall away. Your intuition tells you that the hot and cold air will mix. But mixing is a human word for a statistical trap. The fast molecules slam into the slow ones. Energy is traded, bartered, and stolen. But notice the direction of the flow. You never, ever see the fast molecules get faster while the slow ones get slower. You never see the hot side steal even more energy from the cold side to become a superheated pocket of air. Why? Because the universe is a terrible accountant. It doesn't want to concentrate wealth, it wants to spread the poverty. This is the second law of thermodynamics, and it is the reason cold feels like an encroaching shadow. Energy is only useful when it is concentrated, when there is a difference between hot and cold. That difference is what allows engines to turn, hearts to beat, and stars to shine. But every time energy moves, a little bit of it leaks into the environment as low-grade vibration. It becomes cold energy that is so spread out, so thinned, that it can no longer do work. When you feel a draft in a room, you are witnessing the death of a difference. The universe is erasing a gradient. You think of cold as a lack of energy, but in a broader sense, cold is the state of maximum probability. It is much more likely for energy to be spread thinly across 1 billion atoms than it is for it to be concentrated in 10. Therefore, the universe wants to be cold. It is constantly working to turn every roaring sun into a lukewarm soup of dissipated heat. We call this process cooling, but it's actually the steady march of entropy. Cold is the equilibrium. Cold is the default. Every bit of warmth you feel the sun on your face, the heat of your own blood is a temporary, highly improbable rebellion against the statistical certainty of the void. You aren't just losing heat to the air. You are losing your uniqueness to the math of the universe. We have spent this time dismantling the physical reality of cold. But we haven't addressed the most stubborn liar in this story, your own body. You believe your skin is a thermometer. You think that when you touch a piece of metal and a piece of wood in the same room, your senses are giving you an objective report on their temperature. But if you've ever touched a metal railing in the winter, you know the metal feels colder than the wood, even though they have been sitting in the exact same air for hours. This is because your body cannot actually feel temperature. Evolution did not equip you with a sensor for kinetic energy. Instead, your skin is equipped with sensors for the rate of energy loss. You don't feel how cold an object is. You feel how fast that object is stealing from you. Metal is a high-speed highway for energy. When you touch it, it sucks the jiggle out of your fingertips with terrifying efficiency. Wood is a cluttered backroad. It steals your energy slowly. Your brain receives the signal of rapid loss and translates it into the terrifying sensation of freezing. Your nerves are not measuring the world. They are measuring a crime scene. You are trapped inside a biological interface that uses cold as a warning system, a biological alarm bell ringing to tell you that your structural integrity is being compromised. If your molecules slow down too much, the chemical reactions that sustain your consciousness will fail. The machinery will cease. In this light, cold is a survival hallucination. It is a psychological projection created by your nervous system to represent a mathematical debt. There is no blue mist. There is no biting wind. There is only a desperate biological machine trying to maintain its internal rhythm in a universe that is constantly trying to dampen the beat. When you shiver, it is your body's frantic attempt to manually restart the jiggle. You are literally shaking yourself to stay real in the face of a vacuum that doesn't care if you move or not. Your sense of cold is the ultimate proof of your isolation. You can never truly feel the outside world. You can only feel what the outside world is doing to you. We began by searching for cold and found only a void. We looked for a substance and found a lack of motion. Now, we must follow that lack to its logical conclusion. If the universe is a game of theft, if every collision is a tax and every moment is an act of dissipation, then there is a final state toward which everything is tumbling. It is called the heat death of the universe, but that name is a paradox. It should be called the final cold. Eventually, the stars will exhaust their fuel, the red giants will collapse, and the white dwarfs will fade into black cinders. The great engines of the galaxies will grind to a halt. There will be no more hot spots and cold spots. The gradient that allows life to exist will be smoothed over. The jiggle will be spread so thin across the unimaginable vastness of space that, for all intents and purposes, the universe will become a single, uniform shadow dot in this final state. Cold finally wins, not by attacking, but by simply being the only thing left. When every atom is separated by light years of nothingness, when the last bit of concentrated energy has been bartered away for a whisper of entropy, the universe will achieve a perfect, terrifying equilibrium. It will be a world where nothing happens, because nothing can happen. Change requires a difference in energy, a hot and a cold. Without that tension, time itself loses its meaning. You think of cold as a seasonal inconvenience, a temporary dip in the weather. But Feynman's reality reveals that cold is actually the destination. It is the silence at the end of the song. It is the state toward which all matter is gravitating, a return to the stillness that existed before the Big Bang kicked everything into motion. You are a brief, flickering candle in an infinite dark room. The cold you feel when you step outside tonight is not an enemy. It is a reminder of the fundamental truth of your existence. You are a temporary concentration of energy, a localized riot of atoms, defying the inevitable quiet of the vacuum. For a few short decades, enjoy the jiggle while it lasts. The silence is very patient.